What's up, everybody? I'm Lawyer Vince, and welcome back to How to Convince. Today, we're talking about something that happens to everyone, being asked an invasive question. You know the moment. You're at a family gathering, and someone says, "So, when are you going to have kids?" Or you're at work, and someone asks, "How much do you make?" Maybe you're on a first date, and they go, "Why are you still single?" Instantly, you feel that pit in your stomach. You don't want to answer, but you also don't want to be rude. So you freeze. You either blurt out too much information or you give some awkward half answer that leaves you feeling exposed. Here's the treat: you don't owe anyone an answer. Just because they ask, boundaries are your right. And the better truth, you can shut down invasive questions without being rude, without making it awkward, and without over explaining. In this episode, I'll break it down into 7 parts. First, why people ask invasive questions to begin with. The second, a 3-step system you can use every time. And 3, my go-to toolbox of ready-made phrases. 4, the 6 most common invasive questions you'll face. And 5, real client stories and how we solve them. Then 6, we'll talk about advanced tactics when people just won't quit. And finally, 7, a Q&A from my newsletter. If you've been following, you know that we do Q&A at the end of every episode. And by the end, you'll have the exact words to protect your privacy, keep conversations smooth, and never feel cornered again. So let's start with the basics. What exactly makes a question invasive? An invasive question is one that crosses into territory you don't want to share in that moment. It might be personal, private, or simply not appropriate for the setting. The line is different for everyone, but the feeling is the same. You feel exposed, pressured, or cornered. And why do people ask them? Usually, it's not because they're evil. It's one of 4 things. The first reason usually is curiosity without awareness. Some people are just curious and they don't have a filter. They think they're making small talk when they ask, "So, when are you going to settle down?" They don't realize how loaded that is for you. The second reason is social dominance. Others use questions as a power play. They want to put you on the spot and see if you square. And that makes them feel in control. Asking about money, promotions, or personal struggles gives them that power. Third reason, gossip collection. This one's sneaky. They don't really care about your answer. They just want information to share. So, what really happened with you and your ex, right? That's not their concern. That's content. Reason 4, genuine care, but wrong method. Sometimes the intent is good, but the delivery is bad. A relative might ask, "Are you gaining weight?" They think they're checking in about your health, but it still crosses a line. But here's the trap. If you over-explain, you give them more than they deserve. And if you snap, you look defensive. The key is to answer in a way that protects your privacy and keeps the tone. Here's the framework I give my clients. It's simple, it's repeatable, and it works in almost any situation. Step 1, acknowledge without answering. This is the pressure release. You don't ignore them. That creates tension. You don't answer. That gives them more than you want to. Instead, you acknowledge. Say, "That's an interesting question." Or, "I can see why you'd be curious." You're buying yourself time and showing respect without handing over your privacy. Step 2, redirect the conversation. Once you've acknowledged, you pivot. The goal is to take the spotlight off of you and keep the interaction flowing. You can say, "I don't usually share details about that, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on how things are going at work." Or, "That's something I keep private. Anyway, how's your family doing?" You're closing one door while opening another. That's why it doesn't feel brute, it feels natural. Step 3, set the boundary if they push again. If they keep pressing, that's when you draw the line. You say, I prefer not to talk about that." Or, "That's personal for me, so let's move on." Tone matters here. Calm, steady, short sentences, not defensive and not apologetic. The sequence is what makes this work. Acknowledge, redirect, boundary. You're giving people the chance to adjust before you lay down the line. Let's get practical. Here are my favorite ready-to-use phrases, the same ones I shared in the Instagram reel that recently blew up. Why do you ask? See the translation here? This flips the script. You're not answering, you're making them explain themselves, and usually they'll realize they've overstepped. Another one I like, that's not something I share, but thanks for asking. Translation here, closed door, polite smile. You're setting the boundary, but you're not being harsh. It's a no with respect. The other one I liked is, I don't usually discuss that, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on X, Y, and Z. Change the topic. Translation, block, then redirect. You shut down the invasive question and immediately throw the ball back to them. Smooth, polite, and effective. These phrases work because they're short. They don't justify, they don't over-explain, and they don't get emotional. They're calm guardrails. And when you practice them out loud, they become automatic. Now, let's break down the 6 most common categories of invasive questions you'll face and the best responses for each. I'll walk you through what these questions really mean and why they're so uncomfortable and how to shut them down politely but firmly. The first category is about money. The question, so how much do you make? Why it stings. Money is one of the top triggers for comparison, competition, and judgment. People might ask because they're genuinely curious, but often it's about stacking themselves against you. If you answer, you risk resentment, jealousy, or gossip. And if you refuse, you risk sounding defensive. The fix here, light, beg, and then pivot. Say, enough to keep things moving forward. How's your work going? Why this works? It acknowledges without exposing, and you don't owe anyone numbers. You keep it positive and redirect to them, which takes the spotlight off of you while keeping the conversation smooth. Second category, relationships. Why are you still single? Or when are you getting married? Why this stings? Relationship questions cut deep because they touch on identity and timing, things that are personal and in many cases, sensitive. Being single, divorced, or not ready for marriage doesn't mean something's wrong with you, but that's how these questions can feel, right? This fix here is a simple boundary and a warm redirect. I want you to say, that's personal, but I'd love to hear how you've been. Why this works, it's respectful. You're not snapping back, but you're holding your privacy. And by shifting the attention to them, you show interest in their life instead of defending yours. The third category is family planning. The question is, when are you going to have kids? Why this things? This one can be especially painful. You don't know if someone is struggling with fertility, if they've chosen not to have kids, or if it's simply not the right time. Either way, it's an intensely private decision. The fix here is being firm but polite. I want you to say, that's something we're keeping private. Tell me about your little ones. Why this works? You're drawing a clear line. This is private without shaming them for asking. Then you redirect towards their kids, which satisfies their desire for connection while keeping your boundary intact. The fourth category, health and body. Have you gained weight or what's going on with your health? See, body questions are often framed as concern, but they can feel judgmental or shaming. Health is deeply personal, and unless you're invited someone into that conversation, it's not their place to ask. So the fix here is a neutral boundary and a friendly redirect. Say, that's something I keep private. How's your training been lately? Why this works? You acknowledge the topic, but refuse to engage with it. Then you shift the energy by putting the spotlight back on them. It communicates confidence, not defensiveness. The fifth category is gossip fishing. So what really happened with you and this person, right? Why it stings is this isn't curiosity, it's content gathering. They're digging for drama to share and not to support you. If you answer, your story gets passed around. If you refuse, you risk sounding cold. So the fix here is to block the gossip, then pivot. Say, I'm not going to get into that, but I hope they're doing well. What's new with you? Why this works? You're not beating the gossip cycle, right? You don't badmouth anyone. You don't spill details. You keep it classy, and then you flip the conversation to something safe. The sixth category is career digs. Why haven't you been promoted yet? Why these things? This question frames your career path as a failure. It's invasive because it assumes you're behind, not successful enough, or missing something. Even if you're thriving, it puts you on the defensive. Here, you want a confident reframe. Say, I've been focused on the work I enjoy most. How's your role? Why this works? Instead of defending your career choices, you own them. You frame your path as intentional, not lacking. Then you redirect the spotlight right back to them. The pattern across all 6 of these is the same. Acknowledge the question without answering it, redirect spotlight back to them, hold your boundary if they push. When you practice these moves, invasive questions lose their power. Instead of feeling cornered, you stay calm, confident, and in control. Let's make it real with some stories because hearing how this plays out in actual situations makes these lessons stick. The first one's one of my clients, an analyst at a big consulting firm. And at his job, he's great, respected on his team, but there was a constant thorn in his side. Coworkers kept asking him, "So, what's your salary?" Right? They want to know how much he gets paid. Now, here's why it bothered him. If he answered truthfully, he risked creating tension because maybe one would think, "Why is he making more than me?" Right? Or worse, that number would spread and suddenly his income was office gossip. On the flip side, if he refused to answer, he worried about looking unfriendly, like he wasn't a team player. Either way, he felt trapped. We worked on a simple line. "That's not something I share, but thanks for asking. How's your project going?" Notice the flow there. He's not defensive. He's not apologetic. He thanks him for asking, polite, respectful, but then he redirects the conversation to something mutual and professional. The next time a coworker asked, he used the line smooth, confident, respectful. And you know what happened? The coworker dropped immediately. No pushback, no awkwardness, no damage to the relationship. Remember, you don't owe private information just because someone's bold enough to ask. Politeness and privacy can coexist in the same sentence. Another one is where I had a client who dreaded family dinners because it's not that she didn't love her families, but because her aunt had a habit of asking the same invasive question every time. "So, when are you going to have kids?" For her, this was painful. The truth was complicated and she wasn't ready to share it. But every time the question came up, she felt cornered. She'd either mumble a vague answer to escape or laugh it off and change the subject, only to feel frustrated later. We practice this 3 step system. The clear boundary, here's what she said the next time it came up. That's personal for me. So I'm keeping it private. Thanks for understanding. Then she pivoted. But I love to hear about how your kids are doing in school. This time, she didn't budge. She didn't dodge. She didn't overshare. She held the boundary calmly, respectfully, and immediately redirected conversation to something her aunt loved talking about, her kids. The result, the question disappeared. At first, her aunt was surprised, but with consistency, the boundaries stuck. And here's the best part. My client felt empowered. For the first time, she left the dinner table feeling like without a knot in her stomach, right? Boundaries don't harm relationships. They protect them. Remember that. They protect your peace. They protect the connection and they make the relationship healthier because you're no longer carry silent resentment. Now, let's talk about what to do when people just won't quit because sometimes, no matter how polite or clear you are, the invasive questions keep coming. That's when you need stronger tactics. The first, use humor as a shield. Humor is one of the fastest ways to deflect without confrontation. If someone asks, "When are you having kids?" you can smile and say, "As soon as they're self raising." Then laugh and move on. Why this works? Humor diffuses tension. It signals you're not answering and it keeps the interaction light. You're saying no, but with a smile. The second tactic, the broken record. Some people are persistent. They think if they keep pushing, you'll eventually care. That's where the broken record comes in. Pick one sentence and repeat it exactly the same way each time. For example, "That's private for me." They push again. "That's private for me." Same words, same tone, no extra explanations. Remember, consistency is power. Most people give up when they realize they can't get you off script. Tactic 3, silence plus a smile. Sometimes the most powerful response is no response. When someone asks something out of line, you can simply pause, smile, hold eye contact, and then change the subject. Why this works? Silence communicates confidence. You don't need to defend. You don't need to explain. The pause itself sends the message that the question crossed the line. Tactic number 4, escalation. Now, let's be real. Sometimes it goes beyond curiosity. Sometimes it starts to feel like harassment. That's when you use the escalation clause. Say, "I've already said that's private. If this keeps coming up, I'll need to step away from the conversation." It's calm, steady, and final. You're not yelling, you're not attacking, you're making it clear that the conversation has limits. And if those limits aren't respected, you'll enforce them with action. The theme across all 4 of these tactics is the same. You don't need to fight. You don't need to explain. You don't need to win. What you need is calm, consistent boundaries. That's what protects your peace and keeps the control in your hands. All right, now let's get into the Q&A. These are real, messy, everyday communication challenges you all sent in through my newsletter. I love them because they're not polished. They're exactly the kind of moments where the right words make all the difference. Question number one. Every time I try to tell a story with my friends, they jump in and finish it for me. Like, I'll be halfway through and someone says, "Oh, yeah, I know this one," and takes over. I don't want to snap, but it makes me feel invisible. What do I do? This one hurts because it's not about the story, it's about respect. When people cut you off, it signals your voice doesn't matter as much as mine. Here's how you handle it. The next time someone jumps in, lean in and calmly say, "Hold on, let me finish this part." You'll like where it goes. Two things are happening here. You're reclaiming the floor and you're doing it without making it awkward. You're not scolding them, you're keeping it light but firm. And once you establish that pattern, people learn to let you land your thought. Question two. My boss calls me sweetheart in meetings. It's not meant to in a creepy way, but it feels condescending, like you wouldn't say that to my male coworkers. How do I bring it up without creating trauma? This is a tricky one because technically it's framed as friendly, right? But it lands as belittling. And if you don't address it, it chips away at your credibility. Here's the line you can use and say this privately. I know you don't mean anything by it, but being called sweetheart in meetings feels a little diminished. I'd prefer if you just use my name. This works because you're not attacking his character, you're clarifying your boundary. You're saying, this word doesn't work for me without making it a bigger indictment. And most people, when given that feedback directly, will adjust. Question three. Whenever I share an idea in a group, people nod, but then move on like I never said anything. Then 10 minutes later, someone else says the same thing and everyone acts like it's brilliant. How do I get my ideas to actually stick? Look, this is such a common problem, especially in workplaces. Here's a mindset shift. It's not just what you say, it's how you package it. Start your contributions with ownership. Say, I have a recommendation for this project. That signals you're taking space intentionally. And then if someone repeats your idea later, calmly anchor it back. Yes, that builds on what I shared earlier. Let's take it further. This isn't about credit for ego's sake. It's about making sure your contributions are visible. And when you consistently tag your ideas that way, people start to notice and respect your voice. Question number four. My mom FaceTimes me all the time, like literally middle of the day, no warning, just a ringing phone and her face. And if I don't answer, she gets upset. How do I set boundaries without hurting her feelings? This is so real. And it's a balance between love and limits. Here's how you frame it. Lead with appreciation, then set structure. Say, Mom, I love talking with you, but FaceTiming at random times doesn't always work for me. Can we set up a time that's hours, like Sunday evenings? That's where I can give you my full attention. So what you're doing is shifting from reactive to schedule. You're not rejecting her. You're giving her something better, consistency. And that's how you protect the relationship or protecting your time. Question number five. I have this friend who will call me and vent for like 30 minutes straight. And when they're done, they just hang up. They never ask how I'm doing. I feel used, but I don't know how to bring it up without sounding selfish. This is a common dynamic. You become the emotional dummy ground. The fix here isn't cutting them off. It's resetting the rules of engagement. Next time it happens, when they pause, step in with, I want to support you, but I'd also love to share what's been going on with me. Simple, clear. It shifts the conversation from one way to two way. And if they ignore that and keep dumping, that tells you something about the balance of the friendship. Boundaries reveal the truth. Question number six. I freeze up when a server brings the raw food. Like they'll put the plate down and it's not what I ordered, but instead of saying something, I just eat it. How do I politely correct them without feeling like a jerk? This is a small moment, but it's huge because it's really about standing up for yourself in low stakes situations. If you can't do it here, it's harder, bigger areas, right? Here's a script. Excuse me, I actually ordered the salmon, not the chicken. Could that be switched? Polite tone, short words, direct ask. No apologies, no rambling, just a clear correction. And what you'll find is that most servers appreciate the clarity. And once you practice this in restaurants, it builds confidence to speak up in bigger arenas because you're training your voice to represent you. Here's a challenge for this week. Write down 3 invasive questions you've gotten before. For each one, script 3 answers, 1 acknowledgement, 1 redirect, and 1 clear boundary. Practice them out loud until they feel natural. If this episode helped you, subscribe, like the video, and join a newsletter. Drop a comment that says privacy is power so I know you made it to the end. And if you want personalized coaching, I offer one-on-one sessions where we role play your toughest conversations until confidence is the default. Thank you guys for being here. This has been such a blessing. I so appreciate all of you guys stick around every single week. This has been How to Convince with Lawyer Vince, and I'll see you same time next week.